Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's time to start this particular event. It's the last event of the week of the Bartlett Festival. Goodness me, what a week it has been. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining this afternoon. My name's Jacqui Glass. I'm the Vice Dean for Research for the faculty, for the Bartlett faculty. I'm actually a professor of sustainable construction, so actually the topic this afternoon of ecopoetics, sight reading and writing, what a fascinating time I think we're going to have. It's a pleasure to introduce this marvelous session.
I think Jackie's frozen for me.
Into other worlds, other ways of expressing what we do, how we see the world. Here is then an opportunity to listen and reflect. We welcome your questions. I'm going to introduce Jane Rendell, colleague of mine from the Bartlett School of Architecture, who's going to be helping you through this afternoon. Jane, it's a pleasure to introduce you and also to welcome our guests, not just from within UCL and the Bartlett. We have a whole range of people this afternoon, and I'm delighted to be able to introduce a fantastic, expressive and reflective event this afternoon. Jane, we're with you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jacqui. Lovely. Thanks so much for thinking of doing an event on poetry at the Bartlett. Great idea, and for introducing us. So as Jacqui said, my name's Jane Rendell and I'm Professor of Critical Spatial Practice at the Bartlett School of Architecture. And with Polly Gould and David Roberts, we teach a module on sight writing. And that's a module for students on the MA Architectural History, Situated Practices and Historic Urban Environments. I initiated sight writing to try and draw attention to the situatedness of writing, to think about the sites through which a writer encounters their subject matter, to the spatial proximities between a writer and their writing, to the ways in which words are crafted on and off the page, and to think about how texts are performed, are published, and the spaces in which they meet their audiences. So writing can respond to sites and situations, but importantly, it can also create them. So a little bit like architecture, writing can also be inhabited. And I think it's this idea that can make a connection with ecopoetics, thinking about writing as the making of an environment. In a wonderful collection of essays and poems called Ecopoetics, Essays in the Field, the editors Angela Hume and Gillian Osborne suggest that while poetry may not transform human systems, the practice of ecopoetics can constitute an openness to what exists or what might exist. And in the first issue of the lovely journal Ecopoetics from winter 2001, the editor Jonathan Skinner writes this lovely phrase: eco here signals no more, no less than the house we share with several million other species, our planet Earth. Poetics is used as poesis or making, so ecopoetics are house making. If a Skinner also writes, ecopoetics would ideally function as an edge, as in the edge of a meadow or a shore, rather than a leading edge, where different disciplines can meet and complicate one another, today we're interested in the possibilities of ecopoetics for sight writing. And so to that end, we've invited some participants from the sight writing course of 2021 to share their work. And to join them, we've invited two poetic practitioners, Tim Cresswell and Caroline Bergvall. Very happy that they've been able to join us today. And we've decided to focus on the theme of water. Rivers, seas and their edges. We've divided the 6 readings that we're going to hear into 2 different strands. Polly is going to introduce one and David is going to introduce the other. So I'm going to hand you over to Polly now.
Hi, lovely to be here. My name is Polly Gould and I am an artist and a writer. My book, titled Antarctica Art and Archive, came out in 2020, published by Bloomsbury. And I think of it also as a form of eco-poetics. That is, that it draws connections between human creative making and the natural environment In my book, the watercolor paintings of the Antarctic explorer Edward Wilson are the key objects of study. I use them to focus on and write about medium, but I also engage by making artworks of my own. I revisit Antarctica through the archive and I explore practices of observation in art, anthropology, science, stories of exploration and open air watercolor painting, of weather experiments and ethnographic collecting, of evolution and extinction, are interwoven in a narrative that is patterned as a journey to the South Pole and back again. The writing itself is spatialized and it crosses genres. Our ecological crisis calls for a crossing of disciplinary genres, a radical rethinking of our academic methodologies. Where science has led the way in evidence and data on changing climate, we need the humanities to communicate and engage audiences with values and affect. My recent book chapters have explored this approach also by pairing Victorian art critic John Ruskin with the physicist John Tyndall. Ruskin, among many other things, was also a deeply engaged geologist, and John Tyndall, the scientist, published many poems. The arts and sciences need to be put into relation in order to address the challenges of our times. We need art, we need stories, and we need an ecopoetics. Our three presentations for the next section offer a contemporary approach to making relations through creative poetic practices. Each address watery geographies. We'll hear poems for plastic pollution in the sea, witness an archival salvage on the muddy banks of the Thames, and be an audience for a performed script for challenging wastefulness in the theatre. So I'm very happy to introduce our first speaker, Tim Cresswell. Tim is a geographer and a poet. He is the Ogilvie Professor of Geography at the University of Edinburgh. His most recent poetry collection, Plastiglomerate, penned in the margins 2020, has been longlisted for the Laurel Prize for Ecopoetry. So welcome, Tim, and over to you.
Thank you very much. Great to be here, or in this space, whatever this space is called. So I'm going to read one poem, which is a sort of centerpiece poem from Plastiglomerate. It's called The Two Magicians, and it's after the child ballad 44, The Trois Magicians. The lady stands in her bower door, as straight as willow wand. The dusty blacksmith stood nearby, a hammer in his hand. Weel may ye dress ye, lady fair, into your robes of red. Before the morn at this same time, I'll take you to my bed. I'd rather I were dead and gone, and my body laid in grave, ere a rusty stock a coal blacksmith my maidenhead should have. Then she became a turtle dove, purring in the linden, and he became another, strutting, swelling, whistling his wings, rising to pair with her. Then a hare on the hill, standing, twitching evening air, mad as anything, ready to box. And he became a greyhound, sprung from his master's side, ears swept, sinews straining. Then a gay grey mare, standing in the slack, and he became a saddle and sat upon her back. Then Queen Bee, attended by armies, kissing clover, massing in meadows. He became monoculture, mites, the absence of orchids. Trucks of hives on the highway, fruit farms in the valley. Then she became peregrine, swooping from her scrape, stationary, then falling, stone, a shooting star you thought you saw, lightning, arrow. He became leather hood for manning, strong jesses, bells. He became endocrine disruptor, persistent organic pollutant with lipophilic properties, He became hydrophobic but soluble in fats, colorless, tasteless, odorless mostly. He became crystalline, traveled under many names: anaphex, cesarex, chlorothenopane, clophenatane, dicathane, dinoside, gaserol, grasapon, grasserol, gyron, ixodex, neocid, neocidal, and zeardane. Then the moor, purple blush of heather, paths tracing habits and heft of sheep, the common land, bound only by the circling sky. And he became an act for the better cultivation, improvement, and regulation of the common arable fields, wastes, and commons of pasture in this kingdom, and said, all the tillage of arable lands lying in the said open or common fields shall be ordered, fenced, cultivated, and improved in such manner by the respective occupiers thereof, and shall be kept, ordered, and continued in such course of husbandry, and be cultivated under such rules, regulations, and restrictions, etc. Then grey whale with her enormous hunger, sieving oceans, luminous lives, jiggering, suspended, and he became a multitude. Duct tape, electrical tape, fabric, miscellaneous, fabric, miscellaneous, fabric, miscellaneous, fabric, miscellaneous, fabric, miscellaneous, fabric, sock, fabric, sweat pant leg, fabric, towel, fishing line, golf ball, nylon braided rope, plastic, red plastic cylinder, plastic, black fragments, plastic, Capri Sun juice pack, plastic, grocery bag, plastic, miscellaneous bag material, 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 plastic, miscellaneous bag material. Then air. Wind carousing the barley stalks, lifting, then sinking, tickling the aspen, shepherding leaves against the hedge that lines the hollow way, spreading, spiraling in, the sky circling the fens in summer, lifting, sinking, circling, and she was called Sirocco, Mistral, Bora, Chinook, Zonda, Willy Willy, and Willy War, lifting, sinking, circling, and he became phytoplankton and zooplankton, terrestrial flora, dead, sedimented, crushed, mixed with mud, heated and pressed, folded, and he became kerogen, shales, gaseous, hydrocarbons, ethane, propane, butane, pentane, methane, sour gas, tight gas, shale gas, sweet gas, and he became anthracite, dirty lignite, bituminous coal, fat coal, forged coal, flame coal, and he became paraffin, aromatic hydrocarbons, crude oil, bitumen, kerosene, gasoline, petroleum, diesel. He became internal combustion. He became 1 part carbon, 2 parts oxygen, nitrous oxide, ozone, and he became Orc, Clyde, Fulmer, Shearwater, Gannet, Blaine, Kittiwake, Nelson, Forties, Buzzard, Golden Eagle. He became Argyle, Duncan, Elgin, Franklin, Erskine, Maganza, Pierce, Arbroath, Montrose, Lomond, Everest, Britannia, Alba, Buchan, Andrew, Balmoral, Griffin, Thelma. He became Piper Alpha, Ocean Ranger, Deepwater Horizon. He became Aberthasker. He became Night Shifts, Fly-ins from St. John's, 3 weeks on, 1 week off, an unwanted hand on a thigh in Fort McMurray. He became 5 mile tailbacks on the interstate, A lone man in a car, tuning into Fox FM, we ride through the mansions of glory in suicide machines. He became GMC Sierras, Chevy Silverados, Toyota Tundras, Nissan Frontiers, sprung from cages out on Highway 9. He became rock fractured by high pressure liquid. Then she became earth tremors in the kitchen in Norman, Oklahoma, coffee, Patsy on the radio, snowdrops in January in Q, crazy. Iguanas frozen falling from trees, boiled bats in Sydney, Harvey, howling like a freight, crazy for trying and crazy for crying. Iceberg, twice the size of Luxembourg, worry. 35,000 walruses hauled out in Point Lay, Alaska. Why do I let myself worry? Irma, manatees swimming around a drowned Winnebago, 99% of green turtles born female. Wondering what in the world did I do? Thank you.
Sorry, I need to unmute myself to clap properly for that. Thank you, Tim. That was wonderful. At stages, I felt like I was really listening to an inventory of flotsam and jetsam. It's really mesmerizing. So we're going to move from Tim's poem now to a kind of stories of Victorian practice of retrieval via mudlarking. I'd like to introduce Teagan Dorsch is a student on the MA Situated Practice at the Bartlett School of Architecture, UCL. His current work focuses on spectrality and the spectral gesture as a method for developing ecological notation of veteran trees in Abney Park. But now Teagan will read an extract from London Labour and the Forgotten and share photographs of mud prints taken at the Thames that obscure and interact with the pages. The piece explores relationships between the historical mudlark, found artifacts, and the tide of the Thames. Teagan, over to you.
Hi all. Thank you, Polly, for the introduction. I'll be talking briefly about the mudlarkers and the artifacts of the Thames and foreshore through reading from my piece, London Labour and the Forgotten, which is a fictionalized reimagining of Henry Mayhew's London Labour and the Poor. There was a documentation of the state of working people in 1840s London. The worker examines Mayhew's tonality and often harsh descriptions of the mudlarks through perspectival shifts juxtaposed by the materiality of mudlarking. The mudlarks would scavenge the river for items of value to sell, and the paper of this book becomes obscured by being buried in the mud at the river's edge as an inner reversal of the process of mudlarking. This obscuring of the text then draws on a happenstance of mudlarking ashore, whereby objects become buried and unburied by the chance of the Thames, creating text too that becomes buried in mud while other words surface on the page. This is a portion of Missing Roof. Something drew you back to the foreshore today. When you left, you had no intention of coming here, but you find yourself led back to it unconsciously. You hadn't left work with any destination, so you just kept walking. You wondered to yourself, why am I here? What brought me to the mud? It's a little past lunch, or is it lunch? You haven't eaten today, but nonetheless, you think you'll sit for a while. In all your time coming here, this is the lowest you've seen the Thames. Tides are calm today with few boats passing. You set your bag down to your left and you sit. You are rather uncomfortable on the shelves, another washed up detritus, but you pause, sitting between your bag and a wooden brace. You stay there and you listen. It would be almost impossible to describe this wretched group. So motley was their appearance, so extraordinary their dress, and so stolid and inexpressive their countenance. Henry Mayhew, London Labour and the Poor, Volume 2, page 156. Moving into some of the found artifacts, here's a group of missing roof tiles that I've collected scattered along the river's edge. Some of them still maintain a hole from where the nail held them to the roof from construction. Along with this, there's a collection of broken pipes. They're often thrown by the workers into the river, damaged and tumbled by the tides. And here, I believe we have Tudor-era porcelain with this absolutely gorgeous blue glaze to them. These all happened to be unburied by the Thames the mornings I was on the site, one day earlier or later, and I would not have collected them. I'll leave us with some more prints that were taken on the foreshore, letting the tide pour over the paper. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Teagan. Beautiful indexical muddied pages and your salvaging of these historical mudlark practices that bring us so up to date with thoughts about precarity of work in our current world in so many ways. So now for our next speaker, Hamish Muir is a PhD candidate at the Bartlett School of Architecture, UCL, in association with Central School of Speech and Drama. He researches the environmental sustainability of theatre and the performing arts through a design practice of playwriting. In 2017, he set up a production studio, Arctic Lion, which explores the intersection between environmentalism and theatre. So Hamish will perform for us extracts from his short play, Shutter, which is set on the edge of the Thames behind the National Theatre. The piece explores waste generated by the theatre through considering the environment in which waste is produced and the perception of waste that environment informs. So Hamish, over to you.
Thank you very much, Polly, and nice to see everybody. This is extracts from Shutter. A marshland theatre built on the river, the shivering waters filters interspecies matters into the dramas. There is a damper creeper, salter supper, a peril of flood, tankards of grey disease, earth subside and crack, and a lively lower amnesiac flutter of festivity and utter frivolity in the frothing breakers. A low art at high water level. Stalactites of moss hang like a natural curtain, but we are not near the stuttering Waterloo here. It's pretty clean for a waste disposal site. Did I tell you I once got stuck in a revolving door with Michael Palin? Just my luck. Rain is on the way on the busiest afternoon of the month. That's why they pay me the big bucks, I suppose. Bad luck follows me around like a fart. I used to volunteer in a woodwork shop. We had all of these old mirrors. I, of course, was asked to dispose of them. My boss said, "I hope you're not a suspicious person." I am now. One day the Thames will burst, swilling plyboard and cardboard, but the concrete wipes everything clean. It washes away, theatre disappears. There will be no programme caught in a window. There will be no sun-bleached ticket stuck to the ground. It will be a skeleton with no flesh, no face, no fishing, no parking here. You feel exposed, vulnerable, naked on a public stage where the movement of bins and men are in a warped ballet because the boss is watching from up there and the punters are watching from over there and God is watching from up above. But there is a devil under the tunnels that you cannot see. You can clamp the earth down in concrete and tar, but the weeds still push back. And here's the catch. People want new things, but they don't want to chuck perfectly reasonable old things away. Hamlet's been performed countless times at the National Theatre. Step right up. Want to do something good for the environment? Follow me on Instagram at Silent Cheese and Hammy Theatre. Mime is better for the environment because we keep our mouths shut, meaning less CO2 comes out of our gobs. For every ticket we sell, we offset by making a promise to plant a cherry orchard when we can afford to own a garden. Hashtag love Chekhov, hashtag love Monty Don. We're awfully loud for a mime artist. Climate change is not really my remit. It's nobody's remit. Maybe we could report it to the police, but they can't do much about it either. Even if it does happen on our watch, I've got bigger things to think about anyway. Did I tell you I once got stuck in a revolving door with Michael Palin? I've seen the Eiffel Tower being loaded out into a truck out here. They want to keep everything in. That's why the windows are so small, but sooner or later it all comes out in the wash. We have to make this space work, justify itself. Think of the land price per square centimetre. Every part has to count, but this space is crucial. I always say if there are lorry delays or the skips overflow, it affects the reviews. Did I tell you I once got stuck in a revolving door with Michael Palin? We're round the back, having a cuppa, whilst the laughter is kept redacted by the dark castle walls. The gentrified chorus of bones and nutters lingers, waiting for the last judgment to mutter. There is no romantic sweeper, no grotesque miser here. We are under the shutters in the old Tudor gutters on upper ground floor. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thanks, Hamish, for that great performance. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And thanks to Tim and Teagan, too, for all of your examples of making relations through an ecopoetics. I think each of these works in different ways follow this quotation. They're all making good use of the things that we find, the things that everyday folk leave behind. It's a little bit of poetry from me, and it's actually quite pertinent. Some of you will recognise the Wombles, heroes of 1970s UK children's TV, but they're also the mascot activists for the forthcoming Glasgow COP26, campaigners against waste, advocates of repurposing and retrieval. But now I'd like to hand over to David Roberts, and he will introduce the next section. Thank you.
Thank you, Polly. Thank you, everyone. Can we just meet every Friday afternoon for poetry and Hamish? My name's David Roberts. I'm a lecturer in architecture at the Bartlett School of Architecture and part of collaborative art practice, Fugitive Images and Architecture Collectives Involve and Breakline. I teach with Jane and Polly on site writing, a course that I also had the great pleasure of taking during my master's, and it's one of those courses that changes you. So in fact, it was so transformative intellectually, politically, emotionally that I actually remained mute in silent awe in the class for the first 2 months until I found my voice through my own site writing project, and I haven't stopped since. So in my collaborative practice, I use site writing and performance to gather community groups around their radical social, political and architectural histories under our feet. And the work is driven by a belief, as Adrian Murray Brown urges, that the pleasure of community, of interdependence, imagining and living into new stories together are a necessity to counter scarcity economics. It's my joy to introduce the final trio of readings from Caroline Bergvall, Chia-Ying Chou and Kanza Leghari, whose poetic, powerful works shift in linguistic, temporal and spatial registers with the ebbs and tides and flows of their sites. These pieces experiment with key considerations in site writing, how material qualities and social relations of a site can be transposed into writing, but also the relationship between verbal and visual registers on the site of the page, or over the past 18 months, increasingly rejoicing in the potential and constraint of the faltering, flattening frame of the Zoom window. We begin with Caroline Bergvall, an award-winning poet and interdisciplinary artist working internationally across languages, media, and art forms. Caroline frequently works transhistorically, using ancient literature to reflect on current poetic modes and situations, as reflected in her newest book, Alice Soon Sings, and her current performance cycle, Sonic Atlas. She is visiting professor of English at King's College London. Caroline will be reading from Drift, which takes us on a journey through time and space, where languages mix, where the ancient cohabits with the present, where Nordic and Anglo-Saxon tales of exile shadow today's harrowing lives and losses during crossings of the Mediterranean. Over to you, Caroline.
Thank you very much, everybody. Actually, it's wonderful to be here. The project Drift started as a combination between being interested in Anglo-Saxon poetry and some of the letters that have disappeared from the modern English alphabet and that were still at work in Anglo-Saxon, and the devastating tragedies that are taking place in the Mediterranean with the crossing of migrants, of which the first one that came to national news in 11th of April 2012 when a migrant boat, which has since been known as the Left to Die boat case, was actually observed drifting and not being picked up by a whole array of super sophisticated ships and all types of surveillance mechanisms. We know the rest of these stories. That plus the fact of the anonymous seafarer of the 10th century, written anonymously, one of the great sort of elegiac poems, sea poems of Anglo-Saxon poetry, and portraying a sailor like some of these quest poems that disappears into the sea, also anonymous. So for me, ecopoetics sometimes is also about how do you research between elegy and testimony. I'm going to read from some of the poems that became my own seafarer. Let me speak my true journeys, own true songs. I can make my sorry tale, ride soggy truth, Thothgate, some serious reckon my ship sailing reckies tell. Who ik, how ik, racked from travel, good days swindled, oft thrown about, bitterly tested, banging head, keeling at every beating waves. What cursed fool, grimly beshipped, couldn't get signs during many a night wacko, caught between what's gone or what's coming, on crossing too close to the cliffs, blow, wind, blow, and on am I. Cold, gesprung, weary, worn were my feet, frost-bound in the ice-blinding clamour of Kulla. City sank further, seafaring is sea fodder, hard humbling. Could scarcely move or draw my breath, cursed with nightmares, get whacked by sea chops, gave up all parts of me on get battered ship, yet a hunger in on mind. Stole me to more weird comas, let me freeze. Blow in, blow, anon am I. Can't ache for him, nor him for ache, nor praises, nor raise love skirts, nor rings, nor harping, nor all-round loveliness. How ache miserable now, heaven knows, last living soul, behind with ice castles, sky butting against sea, against sky, against sea, against sky, against sea, against sky, against sea, against sky. Blow in, blow, anon am I. Going north, like getting to China, westward way, crossing the Atlantic. Left the shore, turned sailor. The rays worked round to the north-northeast, the West Sea is the North Sea, east of Iceland. All men are Easterners. A shipmate known as William Brown, Gudrid fared to Greenland, on to Vinland. Mary Lacey northing it as William Cavendish, Rachel Wrong northing it as Billy Bridle. Elizabeth Bowden did her work well as a strong, active boy on this ship. Mary Bonney, Anne Reed, Paris Fantabulosa, here, all scarper to sea. Going north like going south, land upraises in saucer-shaped world. The world is flat when maps are round when maps are flat. Phantom vessels warp in out of time holes, abandon loose fittings at wharf floats, cargo, steamers, gas goes, love skips, Lady Lovibond in the Goodwin Sands. The Beit Chimo ghost ship of the Arctic. The Tuxedo Royale festering in Hartlepool with her revolving dance floor. The Octavius Petrif of the Northwest Passage captain at his desk, still writing in his log at the end of space. There is no restaurant. Where's north from here? From had, from her. Kom ut av kursen havville. Siggan att komma havvillud och dakens och myrker och havvillor och thokor. Och havvillor. Cannot pocket see through this sokur where Vanon never knew. Who had to steer out of this rook, this moss, dreamily wet a stout and matter sea, thick dank shadowy, lost all reckoning, the sea coagulated. Oh, what's not light, oh, what's not dark, deadlock it, beat bells, blow foghorn storm, the ceiling set the head on fire, light up this darkness, for bearing poor piss hala. That's why I would get happily, get drunk, laughs of dark night skew and night sky, night clouds, shadowy northern snows, earthless orphans, hurtled in containers, noodle on plastic beach, in the corner coldest of the storm. Days now, clasping at my cracking skin, no man to steer the failing structure. I'm a hostage of the waves, floating in my coffin. I have lost all my papers, all I had with me. One man gone, that's all they'll say. One man gone, that's all they'll say. Blow in, blow, anon am I. Blow in, blow, anon am I. To the northern, near north, to the eastern, near east, to the western, near west, nor to the southern. Nor is gemeint my mind, nor hjärta in my heart, nor the bane of my bones, nor the lime in my limbs, nor does a beacon guide my back, nor is she aboard ship, nor does ever anything what's unknowingly known, or knowingly unknown, a backward or frontward, be free up away for certain. That's why ik have the long one, must find the horizon hump. Ik have the longing, must follow the wave. Blow in, blow, anon am I. Blow in, blow, anon. Sailed on to red tides, to the sea of mercury, island hopping to the abyssal plains, to isles of dumping, to knolls of wild plastic, to rigs of leaking, to the flaming scrap swamp circle round pillars of solid skitter, upsetting camp on a heap, thinking it be homelike. Shoring up alongside floats of glued bird wings och exploding tar, floats of glued blurred wings och exploding whales that are family, that are war, that are stars, that are ghost gongs, that are bone sounds, that are ropes, that bear the load of days, that are nights, that are shorelines, that are human shiploads, hostage of the outbounds, abandoned skiffs that are anchors undermined, och squatter settlements, blow in, blow, blow in, blow, blow in, blow, anon am I. Blow in, blow, anon am I. Everything passes into everything, anon I pass to everything. Blow in, blow, anon am I. Everything passes to everything, and on I pass to everything.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Gosh, what an exquisite, compelling performance. Thank you so much. Oh, gonna catch my breath. And we continue to swirl and drift across the seas of history to the works of Chia-Ying Chou, anchored on issues of the blurred boundaries in between cities, nature, humanities, and social contexts. Chia-Ying is a student on the MA Situated Practice at the Bartlett and one of the writers of Junction, an art and design platform from Taiwan. Chia-Ying is joined today by Cheng Keng, and they will both be reading from Another Borderland, a project of temporal poetry intertwining between the front line in a lost land, the Isle of Grain, and a blurred borderland, hometown Formosa, exploring the liminal space between tide, languages, and the subconscious. Over to you both.
Thanks, David. We will sharing and reading Another Border to you guys.
Poetry entangles with temporality in the past, present, and unfold a discourse with the future. As a storyteller, talk about the front line in those land here and now, and extend into the blurred borderland Formosa.
I'm standing on the isolated land, sniffing unpleasant industrial sewage and salty flavor from the sea. A smell of marijuana from you pervades in the air. I'm witnessing the faded land of England in the physical body and historical memory. As I'm close to you, noticing 3 different building periods on your body illustrate your history of each era. They are collaged into your surface. And now, the steel bars exposed outside the concrete wall with the graffiti.
I'm standing among the concrete columns deep into the ground, listening to the raw wind echoing among the abandoned space, bringing me back to the wild wind of my hometown, Formosa. 以风出名叫做风城，我的故乡。风说：“孩子，我将作物风干，成就丰收的土壤。”风说：“孩子，我将军机声掩埋，成就愉悦的假象。”风说：“孩子，我将尽我所能，成就美丽的台湾。”我是风的孩子，在九丈风中朗读诗歌，在军tiếng声中独自歌颂，在海岸线中眺望远方，凝视远处那不停淋我的塌方。
The wind said, "Son, I will bury the sound of military aircraft to illustrate an illusion of happiness." The wind said, "Son, I will try my best to create a beautiful Taiwan." I am the son of the wind, reading poetry in wind of September, sing along among the sound of military aircraft, looking into the distance from the coastline, staring at the other place that hasn't let me.
不同的历史痕迹，刻画诉说着每个不同的福尔摩沙。我们岛上的沉淀物隐喻着 Gamula Dominio， 韵味美丽的编织。
From different traces, they tell the story of each different Formosa. The sediment of our islands, a metaphor for
Gamula Dominio,
which means a beautiful weave.
沉淀物形成复杂的图样。
The depositions wove into a complex pattern, the narrative of Taiwan.
将台湾的故事交织
Thread are woven together.
文化与文化
Culture and culture.
时代与时代
Era after era. As an out-of-date film, eroded by time, every trace from the past is gradually replaced by those black dots with a sense of ambiguity. When those bright small points faded away, the whole region faded with them. Where should we go after the last frontiers? Where should the birds fly after the last sky?
One fine day, we are all gone. 在我的梦里，我无畏地挥舞着我的所属，我呐喊着 "Ina ao na maguzwa gita, ina ao na maguzwa gita." 我们来自何方？
Which means where I come from. In
在
my
我的
dream,
梦里，没有沉
I'm
默，
waving my
没有回
belonging
避，
without fear.
我就是
I'm
我，
yelling
像鸣鸟
wildly
般自由翱
in
翔
my
在
dream
宽容的天空，
without any
眺望
silence,
如母亲般的
without
大
any
地。
avoiding. I am who I am. Like a sissin, a bird with soul, flying among the tolerant sky at well, looking out over the maternal land. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Such a endlessly inventive piece of work, and it's so wonderful to hear it across both of you and the background and the incredible images. Thank you so much. Finally, I'd love to introduce Kansa Ligari, also a student of MA Situated Practice at the Bartlett, whose ambitious work engages with South Asian post-colonial theories through site-based visual, oral, and collaborative practice. Kansa will present and perform extracts of prose and poetry, which are part of her own ongoing project titled 5 Rivers and 7 Seas. The project situates itself in Southall to explore Punjabi originating displacements and migrations between the India-Pakistan border and to Britain. Over to you, Kansa.
Hello. The empire was in the business of drawing lines. We live on, with, and through them, is how Malkani and Rajani speak of the British colonial project in India. The colonizers' inked lines reimagined geographies, rendering fields and mountains, rivers, and entire ecologies as blank spaces on its neat map canvas. The 5 rivers of Punjab, the heart of the golden sparrow, split into 2 as a finale act of the colonizer, are living archives of these histories. They change courses, flows, sometimes color, to reflect the violence enacted on and around them. The following reading comprises of extracts from a text I wrote, structured into 6 chapters, each titled after a river in Punjab, and the 6th after the stream they all converge to form. The Panjnand. Panjnand, Panj 5, Nand, water or river. The waters from all 5 rivers of Punjab converge and form a single stream, the Panjnand near Uch Sharif. People who are familiar with the city of Uch on the southern edge of Punjab know better than to disrespect it by saying its name without adding Sharif after. There do not need to be explained that the suffix Sharif belongs to all beings holy. Sharif, noble born, innocent. Before the barrage rained the Panjnand, its waters flowed free and wild, changing course with rains, swelling and shrinking with the seasons and the moon. The soil on its banks grew stories, saints, and songs, ripe, abundant, and tangled with each other. Each year, Uch Sharif hosts a Mela, not quite a fair, that lasts 7 days, a celebration of darshan, not simply witnessing. The Mela is the ecstasy of seeing your beloved spatialized. It is the outwardly joy of the murids who arrive in Uch Sharif restless, roam the alleyways of the city dressed in bright reds, blues, and yellows. The murids sing praise of their murshid all night, nights after nights. They play the 1-stringed iktara, attesting to the truth they see clear as the cloudless sky they sleep under, intoxicated. Surkhposh, one who wears red. The Mela confuses the colonizer. It unsettles his understanding of divinity and things holy. he interrupts the Murid song to ask vulgar questions, insisting on answers that do not exist. He gets frustrated when he is denied legibility and angrily writes over shrines and saints, gods and bodies, rivers and soil. Each year, the Panchant floats with all its strength to lighten the inclines of the colonizer, and the Mela begins. The citizens forget the boundaries that bind them and the names of the gods they wrote learned to become Murids again and dance to the songs of their Murshid. Ravi. हिकमत गुजरी जटबारा दे कन खोल के अपना नच्चे नहीं आसमान तिंग इन्हां हत्थां विच सिर तोल के अपना नच्चे नहीं कच मार के अपनी उड़े नहीं ना बोल के अपना नच्चे नहीं कोई बोल रखो कह को खादी ओ नीली नाल अपने मंजरावी दी. Thank you.
Thank you, Kanza, for such a beautiful, important work. And to all of our speakers, I want to bask in the space and time of all these texts all weekend. And to quote Kanza, think about how ripe and abundant and tangled with each other they all are. Before then, I would like to pass on to Jane Rendell to draw proceedings to a close.
Thank you so much, David. Oh, my goodness, I'm actually tingling with all the incredible work, with what words in their poetic register can do to us, exactly the affect that Polly spoke of at the start. It's just been an incredible range of work, really. So precise, I think. Everyone's worked so beautifully. Thank you, Polly and David, for interweaving it all so well. But thank you, everyone, for keeping just so precise. There's a kind of looseness and openness but precision with what we've heard, and I think a wonderful introduction to anyone listening who's not engaged with poetry or poetics before, to show all these different possibilities, different things that language can do. We're working across visual and verbal registers through time-based medium, working with the voice as a medium, which I think we heard so strongly in all the pieces. We really get this sense of different voices speaking, but Caroline working there as well with silence and absence as a really key part of kind of vocal work. But I also massively enjoyed the range of languages, kind of ancient, modern, in Tim's, that sort of scientific language, and then these visits to these incredible places towards the end, moving to Formosa and to the Punjab. And also, I think for everyone, addressing political issues, but not in a didactic way, but through the kind of poetry of the work. So I think it's been a really incredible way of thinking about how we can address the ecological crisis in a poetic mode. We don't have any questions for us, but if there's anyone out there who's been listening and would like to ask something, we've got a few minutes if there's a burning question. Oh, that's lovely from Noor, who said, thank you so much. This 1 hour was beautiful and so therapeutic and emotional. I think you've touched on something there. Therapeutic. I think this is also work that kind of touches the soul and the psyche, not only the intellect. I think that's another incredible aspect of poetic work, that there's a conceptual, intellectual work there that's going on, but it's actually dealing in emotional register, which is so important for helping us face the ecological crisis, which is a crisis that I think affects the emotions. There's a whole new word, solastalgia, which tries to deal with the kind of depression that some people feel facing us. But I think the poetry itself is also very uplifting. Is there anything that any of our wonderful speakers, or readers I should call you, would like to say to one another, or a comment that anyone would like to make? Feels to me quite fulfilled as it is, but it might be that there's something someone would
I just wanted to say how beautiful that was, all astonishing. Amazing uses of images and voices combined. ideas and emotions. I mean, good poetry kind of combines intellect, sort of embodied feeling and emotion in interesting ways, and there are different balances of it. And I just thought, particularly, you know, I presume people who are semi or non-professional at this, it's just astonishing. And of course, Caroline's a force of nature. I love her work too. Caroline, sorry. So yeah, it was an amazing hour, as someone said.
I was just about to say the same thing, actually. But I loved your reading, but also I really loved the range here and perhaps the depth of exploration that I found as well through questions of geography. So you have all those different materials that take place, but then you have the geographical questioning that has allowed the many different voices to take place today. And I thought that was wonderful. Also, perhaps the fact that you mentioned, Jane, of quite openly resorting to other types of either glossaries or vocabularies or other types of materials that I think are more and more also part of contemporary poetics. So I also have really enjoyed being here and also thought the work presented was brilliant. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Caroline and Tim. That, I'm sure that makes our sight writing participants feel really great to have kind of poet practitioners of your standing to enjoy and see and hear the quality of the work being produced. I know I feel delighted, really. Would anyone else like to say anything? Jacqui, this was your dream child. Would you like to say anything?
And also just point to a question in the chat.
A question's come through. Thanks, Polly. Thank you for such incredible performances. Thanks, Nick, for your question. I have a question open to all speakers. How do you balance the artifice of making something performative and the need to interrogate something so immediate as ecological crises or other topical issues? That's a great question. Really gets to the heart of the practice, I think. It's a difficult one to answer. We may need a second session to get into that. Has anyone got a kind of haiku answer for Nick?
If I can just step in, perhaps, I think definitely the performative that we have seen at work here through the finish, if you like, of the works, don't hide the research element of the work. And perhaps it's not an answer, but it's a way of proceeding that you can have a lot of affect, a lot of emotive work, a lot of performative work. And by showing its research, you sort of also allowed to ground it in the unfinished questions that we're facing. So I wonder whether that at least is one, not an answer, as I said, but one aspect that I thought was very present here today. And it's certainly a way of not burying the question, but then also allowing for the all-important emotion of art and definitely the therapeutic aspect of it to also come to the fore. So it allows for a cohabitation of those. So that would be one way, I think, of thinking about it that we saw here today as well. So.
It's a great answer. Thanks for bringing out the research element, because these master's courses, in particular situated practice, just to big it up for a moment, was such an exciting new course with our course director James O'Leary and other colleagues who work on it, is that it absolutely combines research and practice. So it forms that really nice space between the two that allows this kind of work that's both academic and performative and creative to emerge. Jacqui, would you like to say something?
Yes, thank you, Jane. Thank you very much, everybody, and to our participants also. I think what we have heard this afternoon and the moment that we've had together this afternoon has been a series of invitations, actually, a series of invitations to discuss, to think, to reflect, and to engage in conversation and narrative in a range of different ways. And Jane, I would really enjoy a follow-up session to take this further, because I think we've opened a door here. I think we may have to continue. So thank you.
Thanks, Jacqui. That's a wonderful way to end, actually, with an open door and an invitation to continue. I agree. I think it's these individual works, they clearly engage with each other, and they also have listeners. So I think we will wrap up now, but I just want to do a massive thanks to all our readers, speakers, and to Polly and David for so beautifully guiding us through the two strands. And also just a massive thanks to everyone who's been listening, because without listeners, writers are kind of on their own. So without readers and listeners, it wouldn't be the full thing that it's been this afternoon. So thank you all so much. I hope you've really enjoyed it. I hope those of you who are new to the Bartlett and UCL have really enjoyed your first week, and that everyone who's been part of the festival as a participant and listener has enjoyed this week. I think it's been really quite incredible. It's a lovely way to begin the new academic year with all its complexities and excitement for the year ahead. Massive thank you to Nishat and to Abby, who've supported putting the event together and making it all work so seamlessly. Thank you so much. Very much behind the scenes, but an absolutely vital support structure for us. And Abby's going to make it available as a recording for those who'd like to re-listen. I think I will definitely be re-listening. So thank you all so much, and enjoy your weekends. Take care. Bye.